It's the KC Arts Beat Report. I'm Patrick Neas. You know, Bela Bartok, the great 20th century Hungarian composer, said, "It may be that some composers don't believe in God, but they all believe in Bach." And today we're going to be talking to a man who definitely believes in Bach, William Baker, the artistic director and founder of the William Baker Festival Singers, and also the Choral Foundation, which engages in so many wonderful musical projects in the Kansas City area and beyond. We're going to be talking to him about the Festival Singers' upcoming performance of Bach's great Mass in B minor, a rare opportunity to hear this work, April the 6th at Grace and Holy Trinity Cathedral. But before we do that, I'd like to please ask you to like and subscribe to our channel, and please share this video with people you think would be interested in it. And also, please follow us on Facebook, where every single day we have lots of great information about uh, composers, writers, filmmakers, authors, and also information about the arts happening in Kansas City. That's KC Arts Beat on Facebook. And now it's time to say hello to my good friend and colleague, William Baker. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Patrick, and thank you for all that you do for the arts in Kansas City. Not only for your great writing and for your work with this recently created podcast, but for all of the championing and enthusiasm and creativity and receptiveness that you have been in this city for decades.
Well, Bill, this podcast is off to a great start. So thank you for those kind words. I really appreciate it. Well, and the same could be said for you, too. I mean, the William Baker Festival Singers has made a mark on Kansas City for decades as well, doing wonderful works. And I think one of your specialties, Bill, is large, ambitious works that are really unique to you. And perfect example of that is the Bach Mass in B minor.
Well, the Mass in B minor, I think, can be considered one of the great monster pieces of musical history. Yeah, I
Have you
think
ever,
it's, pardon me?
I was just going to say, have you ever conducted it before?
I have. The Festival Singers actually performed it in 2009. And we were told at the time that it was the first performance of the work mounted by a Kansas City organization in the 25 years before that. So we that
Wow.
was a we felt that was a great blessing to be able to do that in 2009. And now, 16 years later, here we are at it again. So this will be the third time I've actually conducted it.
What do you think puts people off from tackling this work? Why isn't it done more often?
Well, the Mass in B minor, I think, is one of the greatest accomplishments, expressive accomplishments of Western humanity. It's a Mona Lisa. It's a Sistine Chapel. It's one of the towering enterprises in the choral art. It is. I was talking to one of our section leaders yesterday. It is not just difficult, but it is because it was assembled at from different times in Bach's career and life, but it's difficult in a myriad of ways. You know, a Missa Solemnis is an extremely difficult and punishing piece, but it's difficult and punishing generally in the same way. Bach, it's difficult and punishing vocally in 25 different ways. That's one of the other thing about it is that there is so much choral singing in the work, so much choral singing at extremes of range, extremes of melisma and speed, vocal demands, and it keeps, as Shaw said one time, it keeps coming at you and coming at you and coming at you from different directives, or different directions. And the piece is the stamina, the sheer stamina to rehearse it, the sheer stamina to perform it, I think is understandably off-putting. Plus, it's an expensive project. It takes a lot of rehearsals. It takes a lot of time with the orchestra, a lot of time with the soloist. And I think between the vocal demands, I think between the musical demands, and I think between the organizational and logistical demands, it makes it it's a challenge to put it together.
You had mentioned the name Shaw, and I'm sure you were referring to the great choral conductor Robert Shaw, a conductor you have quite a relationship with. Uh,
Well, I was privileged to sing in Robert Shaw's Atlanta Symphony Orchestra choruses for 12 years and in the Atlanta Symphony Chamber Chorus for a number of those years. And I had an opportunity to sing in the Robert Shaw Chamber Singers, which was a professional chorus based in Spivey Hall. Um, Mr. Shaw's affection for Bach, I think, is probably as deep and abiding as anyone that I've ever known. Um, Shaw once said in the rehearsal that the only unforgivable sin is a sin against Bach.
wow. Well, I know one of his I think he's recorded it more than once, the Mass in B minor. I know one of those is one of your favorite performances. What is it about that performance that you like so much?
Well, there's Shaw did it, to my knowledge, three times. He recorded it in the 1940s on 78s, which we have in the Sullivan Library here at the Choral Foundation. He recorded it with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra and Chamber Chorus, of which I wish I'd been on it, but I wasn't. And that's a very good recording. But his 1960 recording on RCA Victor with the Robert Shaw Chorale, I think is one of the finest choral recordings that has ever been made. Um, the soloists, Sarma Indich and Adelaide Addison, Florence Coppola, of course, Mallory Walker, and Ara Barabian were just amazing. And for my money, the Robert Shaw Chorale from the late 40s to the late 60s may have been the finest professional chorus ever assembled. And Shaw's love for the piece, I think, comes through in every part of it. And honestly, Mr. Shaw's 1960 recording is my model for doing it and how it is to be done.
Well, since 1960, there's been a lot of research and activity in the authentic period instrument movement. Has any of that affected how you conduct the work or hear the work or interpret it?
I think there's I think a lot of the work in the early music and authentic instrument world is very important and very interesting and very useful. But I also think that there is a place for performances of these works using modern instruments, using modern tuning or settle tuning. Um, the convention of A equals 440 is really only codified since about the 1930s. But I think just from a practical standpoint, using modern instruments and singers of this time, I think there's a place for doing it the way that it's done now. Even though I find the recordings of those early music specialists to be exceptionally interesting.
Uh-huh. Um, we all think of Bach as the ultimate Lutheran composer, but the Mass is a Catholic liturgical form. What was that all about? How did he come to even write a Mass?
Patrick, that's one of the great mysteries. We just don't know. In Leipzig in Bach's time, doing the Missa or the Kyrie and the Gloria in a worship service in Latin was not unheard of and was not prescribed against by the fathers of the Lutheran Church. Bach wrote the Sanctus in the 1720s and did it for a Christmas Eve service. We know that. And we think that very well may have been the only part of the work he heard.
Hmm.
Why he did this, why he completed the Mass, we just don't know. And there are some scholars that will contend that it's not a certainty that Bach intended for these pieces to be performed or to be understood as a single Mass in B minor. The more that I read about it, the more that I study it, and I do not claim any um, authoritative um, status on the work at all. I'm a slave in chains to it. The more that I study it, I have come to believe that Bach did intend for this to be a a single work, because he did bind it together. As you know, it's such a transcendent piece, and it's so massive that it was never performed until 100 years after Bach died.
Hmm.
And Bach had to know, even though he was in the final years of his life, he had to know that the piece was on such a scale that he would never hear it, at least not in this life. It's almost as if, and Bach being a very religious man, it's almost as if Bach created a final offering to lay before his God, knowing that it wouldn't be long before he himself would be standing before that altar.
That gives it even more spiritual power, don't you think?
I do, and I don't think this piece can be fully appreciated and understood without a sense of Bach's religious fervor. This is deeply spiritual music. The more you study it, the more that you dig into it. And I've had this time conducting it, I've had more time and more space to do that. But you see how every note of the piece carries spiritual weight. Um, it is it's a profound human statement.
Bach's works are often noted for their intricate theological symbolism. Are there any highlights of the work that, jump out at you where he does that sort of thing? Um,
I think in the first two movements in the credo, I think that he uses an ancient technique in many respects that is resembling of Palestrina, and that in the when he's talking about I believe in God, the Father Almighty, the first words of the creed, he's using an ancient form, stile antico, that gives the idea that these words have stood for hundreds of years. These words will stand till the end of time. I am using an ancient form that underscores the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end of these words. And I think that's one of, if you studied the work and performed the work every day for the rest of your life, you would find something new each day.
that's very interesting about Palestrina. Bach, he was familiar with his music, wasn't he?
He was. He was. Bach, in many respects, and this is, he created so many things and innovated so many things that I think that sometimes we forget how scholarly he was and how aware he was of the forms that he inherited and how he innovated on those forms. He was a Bach was always a student. He was always a student of his art.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that he, as a very religious man, believed that his scholarship and his innovation and his creativity came from God. When Bach was dying, one of his last words was, "Do not mourn for me, for I am going to where music is born."
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like he really poured his whole heart and soul and intellect into this work. And it's not just for choir. I mean, there are soloists involved too. Can you tell us about your soloists?
Well, three of the soloists I'm working with for the first time, and I know them by reputation and recording, and they are brilliant young soloists. Zachary Devon was a soloist with our summer singers for Mendelssohn's Elijah and for Haydn's The Creation. This is his first appearance with the festival singers. Ed Fraser Davis, of course, has been on our staff now for nearly 10 years. He's the director of Vox Venti in Chicago, which is our primary ensemble in the Chicago area. brilliant composer, and a very fine conductor, and a very underrated soloist. He's a fantastic soloist. Of course, the son of Sir Andrew Davis. He performed the Fauré Requiem under the baton of his father with the Toronto Symphony about 2 years ago.
Oh.
And every time that he appears in a oratorio role, he gets rave reviews because he is a brilliant singer on top of all of his other amazing gifts.
Mhm. Yeah, five soloists all together in this work. That's amazing. And it's going to be at Grace and Holy Trinity Cathedral, downtown Kansas City. It's that
Yes,
wonderful Episcopalian Gothic church. It seems like a perfect venue for this work.
it really is. It's just the right size, and it has just the right balance of clarity and resonance for this work. They have a nice portative organ, and that's where we performed it in 2009. And I can't think of a better place in Kansas City to do it.
What is a portative organ?
It's a small, self-contained organ that's often used in Baroque music
I see. Uh-huh.
for the continuo.
Excellent. Well, again, the Bach Mass in B minor, one of the great iconic works of Western civilization. As Bill said, it's the Mona Lisa or the Sistine Chapel in music is that important and hardly ever performed. And, people just don't have the resources to carry it off. Thankfully, the William Baker Festival Singers are here to do it. And also, the Choral Foundation is here, and they do so much great work in so many different areas. I know we're talking about the Bach Mass in B minor, but Bill, could you just give us an overview of everything the Choral Foundation does?
Well, we've been blessed to be able to watch grow um, a national arts organization right here in Kansas City. The Festival Singers is the flagship of 12 ensembles based in 4 states, six summer groups now, and the Festival Singers here, the Festival Singers in Atlanta and Vox Venti in Chicago, and Spanish language choir based here in Kansas City, Voces Festivas, year-round Jewish group based in Atlanta, Zimria Festival Atlanta.
Wow.
And we have two educational institutions, the Institute for Choral Creativity that sponsors new compositions by young and emerging composers, the Institute for Healthy Singing, which helps bring vocal education throughout the country. And our team from the Institute for Healthy Singing just arrived back 2 days ago from their fourth trip to Kenya, working with music educators and students there. We have just established, and Patrick would like to talk to you more about this some other time, a vocology lab here at the Choral Foundation Center in Roland Park that will be a resource for singers and music educators and voice scientists. And we have the Jane Sullivan Choral Library, which is now one of the largest repositories of choral music in the country, 15,000 titles of octavos and 400 masterworks and thousands of recordings. And we're shipping music all over the country every week. So it's been a tremendous blessing to watch all of this grow.
I'm glad you mentioned all that, Bill, because the Bach Mass in B minor, as you say, it's costly to put on, as well as all of your other activities, which are just amazing, and we just heard you mention them. So, beyond a ticket price to the Bach and Mass in B minor, I'm sure the Choral Foundation would appreciate any donations that you could make. And also, Bill, in addition to donations, can you tell people how they might be able to audition for one of your choirs?
Yes, you can contact me at wbaker, W-B-A-K-E-R, at festivalsingers.org, and call our office at 913-488-7524, or visit our website at choralfoundation.org. And we would love to, we'll begin auditioning for the Festival Singers 25-26 season in the next few weeks. And you mentioned donations, and I very much appreciate that. Between March 15th and June 15th, an anonymous donor has pledged to match every gift to the Choral Foundation up to a total of $50,000.
Wow.
So anyone that makes a gift to the Choral Foundation now, their money will be doubled by our anonymous donor.
There you go. So please avail yourself of that opportunity to really help out one of Kansas City's wonderful arts organizations that does so much to promote the vocal arts in the area and beyond Chicago, Atlanta, and Kenya. So much good work, Bill. And again, the Bach Mass in B minor is going to be at 2 p.m. on April the 6th at Grace Only Trinity Cathedral. And tickets are $30, and you have a special patrons package too?
We do. We have because $30 is general admission. There's a $100 patron reserve seating, which helps fund the project, but also ensures that you will have a perfect seat for the concert that I will personally select for you.
So it's going to be good. So again, if you want to get your tickets, go to festivalsingers.org, and general admission tickets will be available at the door. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Excellent. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Bill. I mean, you're such a wealth and font of knowledge and a Bach lover and specialist. I'm sure that love is going to come through in your performance of the Bach and Mass in B minor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick.
And this is the KC Arts Beat Report. And until next time, this is Patrick Neas. Thanks for listening.